When looking at the central nervous system, we see both the brain and the spinal cord that's controlling a lot of the automatic or autonomic functions. We have the peripheral nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, but it also includes all of the nerves that go out to the muscles and conscious control. So the difference we'll get into more when we do physiology of the brain, but this is in general terms just the automatic versus the consciously controlled. We're seeing the overall, the biggest part of the brain right here is the cerebrum. That's for social awareness, memory, conscious thought, that type of thing. And we see the high points as well as the low points of the gyrus and the sulcus. I'm going to poke through the membrane here so you can see just how deep those sulci will actually go into the brain, and what those do is increase the surface area to maximize those functions of the cerebrum. Next one on the list is going to be our cerebellum. That's this back part, or little brain. This is for, in general terms, the balance and coordination center. And then connecting the two, if we go down on our checklist a little bit, connecting the two, we see the midbrain. So this is kind of the uploading of those daily activities into conscious thought and control. We refer to that as also muscle memory and everything else. Going back to the checklist, we see after the cerebellum, the next one on our list is going to be the underside of the brain of the olfactory lobes. So here's the underside. This is the very front of the brain. Those olfactory lobes go right out to the nose, right here and here. And so that's the sense of smell. We see remnants of the optic cords right here, the optic nerves. The eyes, remember, were sitting out here. So this is carrying sight. And then they cross right here at the optic chiasma. So this is a nice solid X that we see with it. The next one is going to be the mammillary body. Now remember, we had the big old dura mater, this big sac going around. I'll talk about that again in a moment. But we have this big sac that surrounds the brain, and oftentimes right after the optic chiasma, we see this ball of tissue. That's the hypophysis. But inside of this little area, we do see a slit, and inside of there is the mammillary body. Mammillary body is going to be for homeostasis and more primal memory. We mentioned the midbrain already, and looking in the next term on our checklist is the hypophysis, otherwise known as the pituitary. That again would be that little ball of tissue that goes right over the top, sitting right posterior to the optic chiasma. That ball of tissue is there for hormones. I don't care if you use the term hypophysis or pituitary at this point, just make sure you get the function in there. Now, one of the trickier ones that students kind of struggle with is dealing with the brain stem. So here's the cerebellum. If we go on the underside, we see this little swelling, and then there's a region right posterior to that, right behind it. So the swelling itself is the pons, and this is going to be the filtering of information and associates those senses that come into different portions of the cerebrum for processing. And then medulla oblongata is this region right behind it. So watch for your pin here versus the pin right here. Okay, the medulla oblongata is going to be a little bit further back and also a little bit further down. The medulla oblongata is going to be there for breathing, for respiration, kind of the primal living functions, if you will. Then we have the spinal cord. We got a good sample on this one. The spinal cord will bring the information to and from the brain from the rest of the body. And then we're left with the last two terms on our checklist, the pia versus the dura mater. Now, actually, there's three layers. You can see some remnants of the circulatory system right here. So the outermost covering that we saw in the brain was the dura mater, literally translating to tough mother. And then we see the arachnoid space that contains the blood vessels. And then to get down into the sulcus, I had to pop through that little membrane called the pia mater. So that's that tissue that resides right on the brain for a total of 3 membranes surrounding this nervous system. And we commonly refer to all 3 of those as the meninges.